The War Council chamber smelled of old leather and older grudges. Sera Thane sat in her designated corner, spine straight against the cold stone wall, her fingers resting loose in her lap. To anyone watching, she appeared patient, docile even, but her ears were hunting. Alpha Connor. Thane's heartbeat pulsed from the head of the table, steady at 72 beats per minute. His second, Roland, sat 3 chairs down, his rhythm spiking to 90 whenever Connor's voice sharpened. Elder Mora breathed through her mouth, a wet rattle that spoke of sickness she refused to name. And Gareth, her cousin, stood by the door with his usual arrhythmic pattern, the old shoulder injury from a training accident 5 years ago still throwing off his pulse. Sera catalogued them all. She always did. In a world without sight, sound became her scripture, and heartbeats were the verses that told her who to trust and who to fear. "The Eastern wolves are moving." Connor's voice cut through the low murmur of conversation. The room fell silent. 3 packs signed a Confederation treaty last month: Eastmarch, Shadowpine, and Grey Ridge. 80 wolves combined, maybe more. A chair scraped. Roland's scent shifted, anxiety bleeding through his usual mask of leather and steel. "That puts them twice our size, Alpha." "Closer to 3 times if we count only combat-ready wolves." Connor's fingers drummed once, twice on the table. A tell. He did that when the math was worse than he wanted to admit. "We have 47 fighters. They have resources we don't, territory we need." Sera listened to the silence that followed. It was a heavy thing, pressing down on the shoulders of every wolf in the room. Riverside Pack had been comfortable for too long, fat on trade routes and valley farmland, but comfort bred complacency, and complacency bred death when predators started circling. "We need allies." That was Marcus, the war chief, his voice like gravel in a bucket. "We can't fight 3 packs alone." "There are no allies left." Mora's rasp carried the weight of 70 winters. "Northwood won't risk it. Clearwater is too far. And Thornwood—" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Thornwood was the name no one wanted to say out loud. It hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre, thick with 100 years of fear and failed tributes. Thornwood meant the mountain pass, the strategic choke point that controlled every trade route from the eastern valleys to the western plains. Thornwood meant Aldrich Stone, the cursed alpha whose gaze was death, who had locked himself away in a fortress of his own making while his pack scattered like leaves in a storm. Thornwood meant power that no one could touch. Connor's drumming stopped. "We need Thornwood." The room erupted. Voices overlapped, sharp and panicked. Impossible. Suicide. The curse. The deaths. The 6 brides who came back broken, minds shattered, eyes empty. Sera heard it all, sorted it, filed it away. But she kept her face still, her breathing even. They would get to her eventually. They always did. "We have a covenant!" Connor's voice rose above the chaos, command threading through every syllable. 100 years old. Riverside provides a tribute bride annually. Thornwood grants us safe passage through the mountain pass. It's binding. The tribute has been symbolic for decades. Roland again, his heartbeat climbing to 105. Lying. Or close to it. "Stone doesn't enforce it. He barely leaves his keep. The pass has been neutral ground." "Not anymore." Connor stood. Sera heard the scrape of his chair, the shift of weight as he moved to the window. Lyra was spotted at the Thornwood borders 3 weeks ago. The old beta, the one who left when Stone's curse fully manifested. She's back. And where Lyra goes, others follow. Silence again. But this time it tasted different. This was the silence of wolves realizing the monster they'd forgotten about was waking up. "If Stone consolidates his scattered pack," Connor continued, voice measured and cold, "he controls the pass. He controls the trade. He controls whether Riverside eats or starves. And if the Eastern Confederacy gets to him first, if they offer him alliance before we do—" He didn't need to finish. Every wolf in the room understood politics. Thornwood and the East United meant Riverside crushed between 2 forces, territory carved up, pack absorbed or destroyed. Mora's breathing rattled louder. "Then we fulfill the covenant. We send the tribute." "And what good does that do?" Roland's scent soured. "Every bride we've sent has come back mad or not at all. Stone doesn't want a mate. He wants isolation. Sending another girl to her death won't buy us anything. It buys us time." Mora's chair creaked as she stood. Sera heard the effort it took, the slight grunt of pain, The sickness was eating her faster than anyone wanted to admit. It shows good faith. It keeps the covenant alive while we negotiate properly. Negotiate what? Marcus's growl held no patience for elder politicking. Stone hasn't spoken to another alpha in 50 years. You think he'll sit down for tea and treaties because we show up with another terrified girl? No. Connor turned from the window. His footsteps crossed the room, deliberate and slow. But he might talk if we send the right girl, one who can give us something we've never had before, intelligence from inside Thornwood's walls. And there it was, the reason Sera had been summoned to this meeting, the reason she'd spent the last 20 years being trained, shaped, weaponized into something her pack could use. She waited. Let the idea settle. Let them circle it like wolves around prey, sniffing for weakness. You're talking about Sera. Roland said it flatly. No inflection. But his heartbeat told the truth, spiking to 120. He didn't like it. Good. If Roland didn't like it, it was probably the right move. I'm talking about our best intelligence officer. Connor's voice carried pride, the kind of pride that made useful tools out of unwanted nieces. Sera has mapped every inch of Riverside territory by sound. She can hear a heartbeat from 100 yards. She can detect lies, track movements, identify wolves by scent alone, and most importantly, she's blind. Exactly. Mora's rasp sharpened into something almost eager. The stone curse feeds on fear. It seeks the light in a person's eyes and extinguishes it. Every bride we've sent could see. Every one of them looked at Aldrich Stone and died inside. But Sera can't see his eyes at all. Connor finished. The curse has nothing to latch onto. She's immune. Not by magic or strength, but by simple absence. She can get close to him in ways no one else can. She can map his defenses, count his wolves, find his weaknesses. And when Gareth's team strikes, Sera's world sharpened to a single point. There it was. The second layer of the plan, the one they'd been dancing around. They weren't just sending her as tribute, they were sending her as bait. Gareth. She spoke for the first time, her voice cutting clean through the thick air. Every head turned toward her corner. She felt their attention like heat on her skin. You're sending my cousin with a strike team. Connor didn't hesitate. 3 days after you arrive, 4 wolves, Gareth leading, wolfsbane arrows. They'll wait for your signal. What signal? You'll know when you're inside, when you've seen enough, counted enough, when you know where Stone sleeps and how many guard him. Connor's footsteps brought him closer. She smelled his scent, pine and authority, and the faint copper tang of blood that never quite left an alpha's skin. You'll send word, and we'll end this. The curse, the threat, the fear. Thornwood will be ours, the pass will be secure, and the Eastern Confederacy will think twice before they move against a pack that killed the Stone King. Sera sat very still. She let the plan unfold in her mind like a map, tracing the routes and risks. They'd trained her for this since she was 7 years old, since the fever took her sight, and Connor decided a blind wolf could still be useful. Listening posts, intelligence gathering, the girl who sat in corners and heard everything. But this was different. This wasn't eavesdropping on trade negotiations or tracking movements through the forest. This was walking into a monster's den and betting her life that he wouldn't notice the knife she carried. You're asking me to spy on an alpha who survived 100 years of isolation. She kept her voice level. To get close enough to a cursed wolf to map his entire territory, and to do it in 3 days before a strike team murders him. I'm asking you to serve your pack. Connor's hand touched her shoulder. Warm, paternal, a lie wrapped in flesh. You owe Riverside, Sera. I took you in when your father wanted to abandon you. I trained you, fed you, gave you purpose when everyone else saw only a broken wolf who couldn't hunt, couldn't fight, couldn't see. I know what I owe. Sera's fingers curled slowly in her lap. And I'll pay it. But let's not pretend this is about service. You're sending me because I'm expendable. Because if Stone kills me, you lose nothing. And if I succeed, you gain everything. The silence that followed tasted like truth, hard and bitter. Mora laughed, a wet, rattling sound. The girl has a spine after all. Good, she'll need it. Will you go? Connor's hand tightened on her shoulder. Not affection, possession. Will you be Riverside's eyes in Thornwood? Sera thought about her father, Brennan, who'd looked at his blind daughter and seen only shame. She thought about the years of training, the endless drills in echolocation and scent tracking and heartbeat analysis. She thought about sitting in corners while wolves decided her fate, invisible until they needed her. She thought about what it meant to be useful, to be wanted, to matter. Yes, the word came out clean and sharp. I'll go. I'll map Thornwood. I'll find Stone's weaknesses, and I'll send the signal when it's time. Connor's hand released her. Good. You leave at dawn. Gareth will follow 3 days behind. We'll brief you on the coded whistles tonight. The meeting dissolved. Chairs scraped, boots scuffed. Wolves filtered out into the cooling evening, their heartbeats fading one by one. But Sera stayed in her corner, listening to the empty room settle. Gareth's footsteps approached, irregular, favoring the left side. He stopped in front of her, and she smelled his scent. Familiar. Brother in all but blood. You don't have to do this. His voice was low, meant only for her. Connor can't force you. He doesn't have to force me. I'm volunteering. Why? Sera stood, her hand finding the wall for orientation. Because for 20 years, I've been the wolf they hide in corners, the intelligence officer they use and forget. This is my chance to be more than that, to be essential, or to die. We're all dying, Gareth. Some of us just do it slower. She turned toward him, her sightless eyes finding the space where his face would be. When you come with your strike team and your wolfsbane arrows, make it count. Don't hesitate, because it's me inside those walls. If I'm standing between you and Stone, you shoot anyway. She heard him swallow. Sera, promise me. A long pause, then, I promise. Good. She moved past him, her hand trailing along the wall toward the door. Now teach me those whistles. I have 3 days to become indispensable to a monster. The night air hit her face as she stepped outside, cool and sharp. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. A rabbit screamed. The forest was eating and being eaten, same as always. Sera breathed it in and began to count her heartbeats. 76 per minute. Steady. Unafraid. She was a weapon now. All she had to do was not break before she drew blood. The dawn came cold and gray. Sera stood at the edge of Riverside territory, a canvas pack slung over her shoulder. Inside, 3 changes of clothes, dried meat, a water skin, and a set of 6 small wooden whistles, each carved to a different pitch. The coded signals Gareth had drilled into her until she could produce them in her sleep. 1 short blast, I'm secure, no danger. 2 short, guards counted, defenses mapped. 3 short, strike now, I'm clear. 1 long, compromised, abort mission. 2 long, Stone is vulnerable, move in. 3 long, I'm dead, burn it all. She didn't plan on using that last one. But it was good to have options. Rolf and Finn waited by the tree line, 2 Thornwood sentinels who'd been dispatched to collect the tribute. Sera heard them before she saw them, of course. Rolf's breathing was deep and measured, a veteran's calm. Finn was younger, his heartbeat quick and nervous at 110 beats per minute. You're the offering? Rolf's voice carried the skepticism of a man who'd seen this ritual fail too many times. You're blind. Yes. Stone will send you back before nightfall. He doesn't want... Rolf trailed off, searching for words that wouldn't sound cruel. He failed. He doesn't want broken things. Sera smiled. It wasn't a kind expression. Then it's lucky I'm not broken. I'm adapted. There's a difference. Finn shifted his weight. We should go. It's a 4-hour walk, and the Alpha doesn't like to be kept waiting. They set off into the forest, Rolf leading, Sera in the middle, Finn taking the rear. Immediately, Sera began her work. She counted her steps, feeling the ground change beneath her boots. Soft earth for the first mile, the scent of moss and rotting leaves. Then a gradual incline, the air thinning slightly, temperature dropping 2 degrees. At mile 2.7, they crossed a stream. She heard it before they reached it, the babble of water over stones. The current was strong enough to make crossing tricky. Good ambush point. She filed it away. Rolf and Finn talked as they walked, their voices low but not quiet enough. Sera's ears were sharper than they knew. Lyra really came back? Finn's question held a young wolf's hunger for gossip. Saw her myself, at the eastern border, bold as sunrise. Rolf's boots crunched through underbrush. She's calling the scattered ones home. Something's changed with the Alpha. You think this one will last longer than the others? He doesn't want them to last. He wants them to run. Easier to maintain isolation when everyone fears you. Sera listened to this, her mind turning over the implications. Aldrich Stone wasn't trying to keep the brides. He was deliberately driving them away, using his curse as a tool to maintain the walls he'd built around himself. A strategy, cold, effective, and utterly lonely. The third mile brought them to a narrow pass between two rocky outcroppings. The wind funneled through with a low whistle, and Sera felt the space compress around them. Choke point. If Gareth's team came this way, they'd be vulnerable. Better to approach from the north, assuming the terrain allowed it. At mile 4, the forest changed. The scent shifted from the familiar dampness of riverside woods to something wilder, older. Pine dominated here, sharp and clean. But underneath it, Sera detected something else. A musk that spoke of wolves in numbers. Territory markers, fresh within the last week. "Thornwood lands," Rolf announced unnecessarily. "From here on, you're under Stone's protection. Or his curse, depending on how he feels about you." Protection. The word was laughable. But Sera kept her face neutral, her stride steady. She was mapping, always mapping. The elevation had increased by roughly 800 feet. The air was thinner, colder. Mountain territory, defensible, difficult to siege. The keep announced itself through sound before anything else. The wind changed, and Sera heard the echo of it bouncing off stone walls. Massive ones, from the way the sound returned. She estimated 40 feet high, maybe more. The foundations were old, settled deep into bedrock. No hollow spots, no weaknesses in the acoustics. "Gates ahead," Finn murmured, his nervousness spiking his heartbeat to 125. The grinding of metal on metal confirmed it. A portcullis rising, the chains thick and well-maintained. No rust, no hesitation in the mechanism. Someone was keeping this fortress functional despite a century of isolation. They passed through the gates, and Sera's world compressed into echoes. The courtyard was enclosed, roughly 60 feet across. She heard the faint drip of water from a fountain or well on the eastern side. 3 separate doorways led from the courtyard into the keep proper, their positions mapped by the way her footsteps bounced back to her. And heartbeats, so many heartbeats. She counted them quickly, her focus sharpening. 12 distinct rhythms from various positions around the courtyard. Guards on the walls, maybe more inside the keep itself. This wasn't a dead fortress. This was an active military installation. Riverside's intelligence was wrong, catastrophically wrong. "Wait here." Rolf's hand touched her elbow, guiding her to a stop. "I'll announce you." His footsteps retreated across the courtyard, boot heels clicking on flagstones. Sera stood perfectly still and listened. She heard Finn's breathing behind her, fast and shallow. She heard the guards on the walls shifting positions, leather armor creaking. She heard the fountain's steady trickle, and underneath it all, a sound so deep and slow it was almost subsonic. A heartbeat, massive, powerful, beating at perhaps 20 pulses per minute, each one a slow thunder that seemed to resonate through the stone itself. Sera's own heart stuttered. She'd never heard anything like it. It was the rhythm of something ancient, something that had learned to conserve every ounce of energy, to exist in a state between living and waiting. The heartbeat of a king who'd forgotten how to be human. Footsteps approached from the main keep entrance. Multiple sets. Rolf returning plus 2 others. No, 3. One set was nearly silent, moving with a predator's grace. The second was heavier, measured, military precision. The third made the stones vibrate. "The offering from Riverside Pack Alpha." Rolf's voice carried the formality of ritual. "As per the covenant." Silence. The kind that had weight and texture and teeth. Then, another one. The voice was wrong. It wasn't loud, but it filled the courtyard like smoke, curling into every corner. It was the sound of boulders grinding together in the deep earth, of winter wind through empty halls, of loneliness so profound it had calcified into something harder than bone. Sera's wolf, the timid thing that usually cowered in the back of her mind, stirred. Not in fear, in recognition. Footsteps crossed this courtyard toward her. Slow, deliberate. The stones vibrated with each impact. Sera tracked his approach with her ears, her head tilting slightly to follow the sound. 6'4", she estimated from the stride length and the way his breathing came from above her, weight around 220, heavily muscled, and that heartbeat, that impossibly slow drumbeat that spoke of something not quite human anymore. He stopped in front of her. Close, maybe 3 feet of space between them. She felt the cold radiating off him, a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. You do not tremble. It wasn't a question. It was an observation laced with suspicion. No, Alpha Stone. You do not weep. No. Are you fool or simply deaf to the stories? The last word carried an edge. He was testing her, waiting for the fear, the tears, the collapse that every other tribute had offered him. Sera tilted her head up, her sightless eyes finding the space where his face would be. Neither, Alpha Stone. I'm observant. Silence. But this time it tasted different. This was the silence of something unexpected, a ripple in a pattern that had been unbroken for 100 years. Observant. He repeated the word slowly, turning it over like a stone he'd found in his path. And what have you observed? You're 6'4", approximately 220 pounds, favoring your left leg slightly. Old injury, maybe 15 years ago. You've been standing in this courtyard for 6 minutes before announcing yourself. She paused, letting her smile sharpen. That's not the behavior of a monster. That's a tactician. The air changed, the cold intensified, pressing against her skin like a physical thing. She'd surprised him. Good. Monsters were predictable. Tacticians were interesting. Look at me when you speak. The command came sharp and sudden, a blade drawn from a sheath. And there it was. The test. The same one that had broken 6 brides before her. Sera's smile didn't falter. She turned her face fully toward him, her clouded eyes meeting the space where his would be. I am looking, Alpha. I'm listening to your heartbeat. 20 beats per minute, abnormally slow. I'm tracking your breathing, deep and controlled. I'm analyzing your scent, pine and snow and something metallic, like ozone before a storm. I see you better than anyone with working eyes ever has. She heard his sharp intake of breath, felt the shock radiate off him like heat. You are blind. Not a statement this time, a realization. Something shifting in the calculus of whatever game he'd been playing. Yes, and you're not trying to kill me. You're trying to understand why I'm not afraid. The silence stretched. Sera counted her own heartbeats, 78 per minute, steady. She refused to give him the satisfaction of fear. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, lower, more curious than cruel. The curse doesn't want to kill. It feeds on fear. No fear, no fuel. You're starving it. Sera filed that information away, a puzzle piece clicking into place. The curse wasn't inherent evil. It was parasitic. It needed terror to maintain its grip on its host. You're dangerous, he continued, and she heard him step closer. 2 feet of distance now. Not to me, to yourself. His hand closed around her upper arm, and Sera gasped. Not from pain, though his grip was iron. From the heat. His skin burned like a furnace, a shocking contrast to the cold that poured off him in waves. Fire and ice existing in the same body, warring for dominance. You're coming with me. He turned, pulling her with him. His stride was long and punishing, and Sera stumbled to keep pace. But even as he dragged her toward the keep, she was working, counting steps, mapping the courtyard's dimensions, listening to the echo patterns as they entered the main building. The great hall swallowed them. Sera heard it in the way sound traveled, bouncing off walls that had to be 30 feet apart, a ceiling twice that height. The smell changed too, dust and old smoke and that same dominant scent of pine and winter that clung to Aldrich like a second skin. He hauled her down a corridor, their footsteps echoing on stone floors. Turn left, 20 paces, turn right. Narrow passage, walls close enough she could have touched both sides. Down a short flight of stairs, 3 steps. Another corridor. He was mapping the cage for her, showing her the boundaries of her world without saying a word. They stopped. Sera heard the grinding of a heavy door, oak from the scent, banded with iron. He shoved her inside, and she stumbled into a small space. The air was stale, cold, but not as bitterly cold as his presence made it. This is your room. His voice came from the doorway, flat and final. There's a basin in the corner with water. There's a bed. You will not leave this chamber. You will not explore. You will not seek me out again. Is that understood? Sera turned toward him, her expression carefully neutral. Yes, Alpha. He stood there for a moment longer. She heard his breathing, felt his gaze on her skin. Then he stepped back, and the door slammed shut with a boom that rattled her bones. The scrape of a bolt sliding home, the lock engaging. She was a prisoner. Sera listened to his footsteps retreat, that heavy, measured tread fading into the distance. She waited until the sound was gone completely, until the only thing she could hear was her own breathing and the faint drip of water in the corner. Then she began to explore. The room was small, 12 paces by 12. She walked the perimeter with her hand on the wall, feeling the weeping dampness of old stone. In one corner, her fingers found rough wool, a blanket on a low cot. The bed was little more than a plank with a thin mattress stuffed with straw. In another corner, the basin. She dipped her fingers in. The water was achingly cold but clean, no scent of contamination. A bricked-up fireplace occupied the third wall. The flue cold and choked with soot. No warmth here. This was a room for storage, for forgetting. But the fourth wall held something interesting. A draft. Faint, but present. She traced it to a narrow window, barred with iron, facing what her internal compass told her was south, toward Riverside. Sera smiled in the darkness. He thought he'd imprisoned her, but he'd positioned her perfectly. If Gareth approached from the south, she'd hear him coming. She could signal. She could fulfill the mission. Unless she replayed the walk from courtyard to this room, the turns, the stairs, the corridor widths. This wasn't the west tower where she'd expected to be placed. This was the east side of the keep, away from the armory, away from the war room, away from anywhere strategic. He'd isolated her, not as punishment, as protection. Did he know? Could he possibly know she was a spy? Sera sank onto the cot, her mind racing. Aldrich Stone had survived 100 years of isolation by being careful, by trusting no one, by assuming everyone who entered his territory was a threat. She'd underestimated him, they all had. This wasn't going to be a simple 3-day intelligence-gathering mission. This was going to be a chess match against an opponent who'd been playing alone for a century and had gotten very, very good at it. Sera lay back on the cot, the thin blanket pulled around her shoulders. Above her, she heard footsteps on the floor above, pacing, back and forth, that distinctive heavy tread. Aldrich Stone, walking the floor of his own prison, trying to understand the blind girl who'd walked into his fortress without fear. Sera closed her sightless eyes and began to count heartbeats, his and hers, both slow, both steady, both waiting to see who would break first. The game had begun. Time became a strange thing in the darkness. Without the sun to mark the hours, Sera measured her captivity in heartbeats and the rhythm of footsteps overhead. Aldrich paced his chambers above her for what she estimated was 6 hours straight that first night. Back and forth, the floorboards creaking under his weight, a caged predator trying to understand the prey that refused to run. When morning came, she knew it only by the change in the keep's ambient sound. Guards shifted rotations with the precision of military discipline. 6-hour cycles, she noted. Dawn, noon, dusk, midnight. 12 guards total, their heartbeats distinct enough that she could identify each one if she concentrated. The eastern window in her cell began to warm slightly as pale sunlight touched the stone. Sera pressed her palm against the wall and felt the temperature rise by perhaps 2 degrees. Not much, but enough to confirm her orientation. South-facing window, eastern wing. She was exactly where she'd calculated. Footsteps approached her door. Heavy, measured, unmistakable. The bolt slid back with a metallic shriek. The door opened. Sera sat on the edge of her cot, spine straight, hands folded in her lap. She didn't stand, didn't cower. She simply waited. "You slept." Aldrich's voice filled the small room like smoke. "Yes. Most don't. The first night in Thornwood, the fear keeps them awake. But you slept like a child." Sera tilted her head. "I was tired. The walk was long, and fear is exhausting. I prefer to conserve my energy." She heard him step into the room. Not far. Just past the threshold. The cold came with him, that unnatural chill that seemed to leak from his skin. But underneath it, she caught something else. The scent of fresh bread, roasted meat. Her stomach clenched with sudden hunger. "I brought food." The words sounded reluctant, as if he resented the necessity of keeping her alive. Something heavy thudded on the floor near her feet, a wooden tray from the sound of it. Sera didn't move to take it. Why? Why what? Why feed me? If you want me gone, starving me out would be faster than waiting for me to break. Silence. Then a sound that might have been a bitter laugh. "I don't want you to starve. I want you to leave, voluntarily, the way the others did." "The others saw your eyes." Sera leaned forward slightly. They saw whatever the curse showed them, and it broke them, But I can't see your eyes, Alpha Stone, so what exactly are you waiting for me to flee from? You feel it. His voice dropped lower. The cold, the weight of this place, the knowledge that you're locked in a fortress with a monster. Eventually that becomes its own kind of seeing. Eventually you'll beg to leave. Or, Sera countered, I'll get used to it. I've lived in darkness my entire life. One more shadow doesn't frighten me. Another long silence. She heard his breathing change, deepening slightly, considering her. Eat. The command was gruff. I'll return this evening. His footsteps retreated. The door remained open. Sera's eyebrows rose. Open, not locked. A test, then, to see if she'd try to explore, to see if she'd prove herself untrustworthy. She reached down and found the tray. Her fingers traced the contents. Bread, still warm. A hunk of meat, venison from the scent. A wooden cup of water, simple but more than adequate. Sera ate slowly, deliberately, her mind working. The open door was a gift and a trap. If she stayed put, she proved herself docile, harmless. If she explored, she proved herself a threat. Either way, she learned nothing of value to Riverside. She finished the meal and stood, carrying the tray to the door. She set it just outside the threshold and returned to her cot, patient, waiting, playing the long game. The day passed in careful observation. Sera listened to the keep's rhythms, building a map in her mind. Guard rotations at 6-hour intervals. Kitchen activity concentrated in the southern wing, 3 floors down. The clang of weapons training in what had to be a courtyard on the western side. Smithy sounds from the north, the ring of hammer on anvil. This wasn't a dead fortress. This was a functioning military installation preparing for something. Evening came. Aldrich returned. This time he lingered in the doorway longer. She heard him breathing, slow and controlled. Heard the faint creak of leather as he shifted his weight. You didn't leave the room. Statement, not question. You didn't lock the door, but you didn't invite me to explore either. I'm not foolish enough to mistake an open cage for freedom. Smart. He stepped inside, closer than before. The cold intensified. Too smart for a simple tribute bride. Riverside trained you for something. Sera's heart rate didn't spike. She'd been trained for this, too. For interrogation, for deflection, for the careful dance of partial truths. Riverside trained me to survive. A blind wolf has to be twice as observant as a sighted one just to stay alive. You're an intelligence officer. Not a question, a certainty. I listen well. Connor found that useful. Connor Thane, your alpha, and your uncle. Aldrich moved closer still. She could feel the displacement of air as he crouched down to her level. Tell me, Sera Thane, what does Connor want with Thornwood? The use of her full name sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with his proximity. He'd done his research, knew exactly who she was before she ever arrived. The same thing everyone wants with Thornwood: safe passage through the pass, trade routes, survival. And he thinks sending a blind girl will secure that? He thinks sending a blind girl will buy time. The Covenant demands a tribute. I fulfill the letter of the law while he figures out how to navigate the reality that Thornwood is waking up again. Aldrich was quiet for a long moment. Then, you're honest. More honest than you need to be. Lying to you would be pointless. You've survived a century by being paranoid and thorough. You already know most of what I could tell you. The only question is whether I'm smart enough to realize that. She heard something that might have been approval in his exhaled breath. Your cousin, Gareth Thane, 28 years old, elite tracker, left Riverside 48 hours after you did, currently 6 miles south with a 4-man team, Wolfsbane arrows. They're planning to strike during the new moon, 3 days from now. Sera's blood turned to ice water. He knew. He knew everything. How? The word came out steadier than she felt. I have scouts. I have informants. I have a century of experience reading territorial movements. He stood, and she heard him pace to the window. Did you really think you could walk an assassination team into my mountains without me noticing? Sera's mind raced. The mission was blown. Gareth was compromised. She had 3 options: deny everything and lose all credibility, confess everything and pray for mercy, or pivot. She chose the third path. If you know about Gareth, then you know Connor sent me to die, one way or another. She stood, facing the direction of his voice. If your curse killed me, Riverside loses nothing. If Gareth's team kills both of us, Connor secures the pass and eliminates a threat. I'm bait, Alpha Stone. The question is whether you're going to take it. You're offering to betray your pack. His voice was flat, unreadable. I'm offering to survive. There's a difference. Sera took a step toward him. You said it yourself. The curse feeds on fear. It needs fuel, but I don't give it any. That makes me valuable to you. Potentially more valuable than killing Gareth's team and sending a message written in blood. And what exactly do you propose? An alliance. You help me stay alive. I help you avoid a war you don't want. She paused. Because you don't want war, do you? If you did, Thornwood would have closed the pass years ago, would have conquered Riverside when we were weak, but you didn't. You stayed isolated, hidden, waiting. For what? For a reason not to be a monster anymore. The silence that followed was absolute. Sera heard his heartbeat, that slow, mountainous rhythm, suddenly spike. Not much. From 20 beats per minute to perhaps 30. But for a wolf who'd controlled himself for a century, it was an earthquake. When he spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, almost vulnerable. You presume much, little bird. I observe. There's a difference. She echoed his earlier words back to him. You carve wooden wolves. You maintain this fortress even though you live here alone. You bring me food yourself instead of sending servants. These aren't the actions of a monster who wants isolation. These are the actions of a king who's forgotten how to be anything else. Footsteps crossed the space between them. Fast, purposeful. Sera's breath caught as his hand closed around her wrist. Not painful, not gentle, just contact, skin on skin. The shock of it stole the air from her lungs. His skin burned. Not metaphorically, literally burned. A heat so intense it was almost painful. Fire trapped under ice, a furnace wrapped in winter. And the moment his flesh touched hers, something else flooded through the connection. Cold. It started at the point of contact and raced up her arm like frost spreading across glass. Not painful, not yet, but invasive. Searching. The curse, she realized. It was using the touch to explore her, to taste her, to understand what she was. And beneath it she felt something else, a flicker, an image, memory. A great hall filled with wolves, laughter, music. A younger Aldrich, maybe 30 years old, standing at the center with a woman at his side. Silver-haired, beautiful, smiling. Then the image shattered. The woman's smile twisted into a scream. Her eyes went white, empty, dead. The curse had taken her, had killed the one person Aldrich loved. The memory released her with a gasp. Aldrich jerked his hand back as if she'd burned him. What, he breathed, was that? Sera's arm tingled where he'd touched her. The cold was receding, but slowly. I don't know. I saw something. Your memory. A woman. That's impossible. The curse doesn't share. It only takes. Maybe it's different with me. Sera flexed her fingers, feeling sensation return. You said I starve it. Maybe when it can't feed on fear, it does something else. Shows instead of destroys. Aldrich was breathing harder now. She heard it in the rapid expansion of his chest, the slight catch in his throat. The curse has never reacted this way. In 100 years, it's been nothing but destruction. But with you, it's curious. And that terrifies me more than the killing ever did. Why? Because curiosity leads to wanting, and wanting leads to attachment, and attachment... He moved away, his footsteps retreating to the far side of the room. Is how it wins, how it always wins. Sera understood then. The curse wasn't just a weapon. It was a parasite that fed on connection. Every person Aldrich cared about became fuel for the thing living in his eyes. So he'd learned to care about nothing, no one. What if I told you, Sera said slowly, that we could use this? The fact that the curse behaves differently with me. What if that's not a weakness but a weapon? How? You want to avoid war with Riverside. I want to survive Connor's betrayal. Gareth's team is 3 days out. She turned toward him, her sightless eyes finding his voice. Let me meet your beta. Let me see your defenses. Prove to me you want peace, and I'll help you achieve it. I'll be your spy inside Riverside's plans. Your insurance that Connor doesn't make moves against you. You'd turn on your blood pack for a wolf you've known for one day? I'd turn on the pack that sent me to die for the wolf who's kept me alive. Yes. She paused. And you'll agree because you're tired, Aldrich Stone. Tired of the isolation. Tired of the curse. Tired of being the monster everyone needs you to be. I'm offering you a way out. The only question is whether you're brave enough to take it. The silence stretched. Sera counted her heartbeats. 82 per minute. Elevated but steady. Finally. Tomorrow. Dawn. I'll introduce you to Lyra, my beta, my oldest living friend, and we'll see if you're as useful as you claim to be." He crossed to the door, his footsteps heavy with the weight of a decision a century in the making. "Sera." "Yes?" "If you betray me, I won't kill you quickly. I'll make sure you understand exactly what the curse can do when I stop holding it back. Do you understand?" "Yes, Alpha." The door closed. This time the bolt slid home. But as Sera lay back on her cot, she realized something had fundamentally changed. The game was no longer Riverside versus Thornwood. It was survival versus extinction, and she'd just chosen a side. Her wolf stirred deep in her mind, and for the first time in her life, it didn't feel timid. It felt certain. "Mate," it whispered. Sera closed her eyes against the truth of it and tried not to think about what that would cost her. Dawn came with the sound of the bolt sliding back. Sera was already awake, already dressed, already prepared. She'd slept in her clothes, unwilling to be caught vulnerable. Aldrich entered without speaking. His hand found her elbow, not roughly but firmly, and guided her out of the room. This time she paid careful attention to the route. 23 steps down the corridor. Turn right. 40 paces. Down a flight of stairs, 15 steps this time. Another corridor, wider, the acoustics suggesting high ceilings and tapestries on the walls to dampen sound. They emerged into what had to be the Great Hall. Sera felt the space expand around her, the echoes of their footsteps bouncing back from walls 30 feet apart. The scent changed too. Wood smoke from a massive hearth, pine, and something new. Another wolf's scent, distinctly female, carrying notes of frost and old loyalty. "Lyra," Aldrich said, and Sera heard the warmth in his voice for the first time. "This is Sera Thane, Riverside's latest tribute, and possibly our newest ally." Footsteps approached, lighter than Aldrich's but still confident, military bearing. Sera estimated 5'7", lean build, age difficult to determine, but the scent suggested mature. 60? 70? Hard to tell with long-lived wolves. "The blind one." Lyra's voice was surprisingly gentle. "The one who slept through her first night in Thornwood. You heard about that?" "Everyone heard about that. The guards have been talking about nothing else. The girl who didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't even ask to leave." A pause. "You're either very brave or very stupid. I haven't decided which yet." Sera smiled. "Can't it be both?" A surprised laugh. "I like her already, Aldrich." "Don't get attached," Aldrich warned. "She's Riverside. She's here on Connor Thane's orders. There's a strike team 3 days out with wolfsbane arrows and assassination orders." The temperature in the hall dropped. Lyra's scent shifted, suspicion bleeding through the warmth. "And you brought her to meet me why exactly?" "Because she knows about the strike team, and she's offering to help us stop it." Aldrich's hand released Sera's elbow, in exchange for protection from Connor's betrayal. "That's convenient." Lyra's footsteps circled Sera slowly, assessing. "How do we know this isn't part of the plan? Get close to us, learn our defenses, signal her cousin when we're vulnerable?" "You don't," Sera admitted. "You can't know, not for certain. But I can offer you proof of good faith." "Such as?" "The strike team's composition. Gareth Thane, my cousin. Marcus Reed, demolitions expert. Cole Vance and Samuel Torres, both combat specialists. They're carrying wolfsbane arrows, yes, but also thermite charges. The plan is to set the charges on the main gate supports, collapse the entrance, trap Aldrich inside, and shoot him with wolfsbane when he tries to escape through secondary exits." The silence that followed was brittle. "That's," Lyra said slowly, "very specific intelligence. I was briefed on this full operation before I left. Connor wanted me to know exactly what was coming so I could position myself to survive it." "And you're sharing this why?" "Because Connor's plan has a fatal flaw. He thinks Aldrich is alone, isolated, weakened by a century of solitude. But I've been here 2 days, and I've counted 12 guards on rotation, heard weapons training, smelled fresh supplies. Thornwood isn't dead, it's sleeping. And if Gareth's team attacks a fully functional fortress, they'll be slaughtered." Sera paused, letting that sink in. "I don't want my cousin to die. But I also don't want to die in the crossfire when Aldrich retaliates against Riverside, so I'm offering you a third option. Let me help you capture Gareth's team alive. Use them as leverage to negotiate with Connor. Avoid the war neither side can afford." "You'd sell out your own cousin?" Lyra's voice hardened. "I'd save him from his own suicide mission. There's a difference." Footsteps approached from behind, heavy, familiar. Marcus, the war chief she'd heard training in the western courtyard. "This is a mistake, Alpha." Marcus's voice was gravel and suspicion. "She's Riverside. She's a spy. Why are we even listening to her?" "Because," Aldrich said quietly, "she's right. About everything. About Thornwood waking. About Connor's desperation. About the war we can't afford." He moved closer to Sera, and she felt the cold radiating from him. "And because the curse reacts to her differently than anyone I've encountered in a century. That makes her valuable. Potentially more valuable than killing Gareth's team and sending Connor a message written in blood." "Valuable how?" "Show them," Aldrich said to Sera. She understood immediately. He wanted proof, demonstration, evidence that she wasn't just clever words and desperate bargains. "Give me your hand," she said to Marcus. "Why?" "Because I'm going to prove I can do something no one else in this room can. Trust me or don't. But if you want to see what makes me useful, give me your hand." A pause. Then she heard him step forward, felt his calloused palm press against hers. The cold hit immediately, the curse flowing through Aldrich, through her, into Marcus. But this time Sera was ready for it. This time she didn't just receive, she directed. Images flooded her mind. Marcus's memories. A younger version of himself, maybe 19, fighting alongside Aldrich in a battle. Blood, fire, victory. Then later memories. Aldrich withdrawing, the curse manifesting, the pack scattering. Marcus choosing to stay, one of the last loyal wolves, training alone in empty courtyards, waiting for a king who'd forgotten how to lead. And underneath it all, a current of doubt. Marcus questioning whether Aldrich could ever be what he'd once been, whether Thornwood could ever be more than a tomb. Sera released his hand and stepped back. "You stayed," she said quietly, "when everyone else left. You stayed because you remember who Aldrich was before the curse. You've been training in the Western Courtyard for 30 years, keeping your skills sharp, waiting for the day he'd need a war chief again. But you doubt. You doubt he can come back from this. You doubt he even wants to." Marcus's breathing had gone harsh. "How did you—" "The curse shows me things when I touch someone. Memories, emotions, truths." Sera turned toward Aldrich. "Your curse isn't just destruction. With me, it's information. I can see through people, literally see their thoughts, their fears, their secrets. That makes me the most valuable intelligence asset Thornwood could ever have." The great hall was silent. Then Lyra laughed, a sharp, delighted sound. "Oh, this is perfect. Aldrich, do you understand what she's offering? She's not just a spy. She's a living interrogation tool. Every enemy commander we capture, every diplomat who lies to us, every wolf who claims loyalty but thinks betrayal, she can expose them all." "At what cost?" Marcus's voice was tight. "The curse corrupts. It destroys. You want to weaponize it?" "It's already a weapon," Sera countered. "I'm just giving it a purpose beyond killing. And unlike Aldrich, I can't accidentally kill someone by looking at them. I'm blind. The curse has to work differently through me. It has to show instead of destroy." "She's right." Aldrich's voice carried a weight of realization. "For 100 years I've been trying to suppress the curse, starve it, cage it. But what if that's the wrong approach? What if the curse needs purpose? Direction? What if Sera's blindness isn't a limitation, but a filter that makes the curse controllable?" "You're talking about partnering with it," Lyra said slowly, "about using it intentionally." "I'm talking about survival. Mine, hers, Thornwood's." Aldrich moved, and Sera heard him address the room. "Gareth's team strikes in 3 days. They're expecting a sleeping fortress and a cursed alpha too isolated to mount a defense. We're going to show them how wrong they are, but we're not going to kill them. We're going to capture them, and then Sera is going to help us negotiate with Connor Thane from a position of strength." "And if Connor refuses?" Marcus asked. "Then we have hostages, leverage, options." Aldrich's voice hardened. "But we do this smart. Tactical, no unnecessary bloodshed, because the real threat isn't Riverside, it's the Eastern Confederacy. 3 packs united, moving toward our borders. That's the war we need to prepare for." Sera's breath caught. "The Eastern Confederacy? You didn't know?" Lyra's tone suggested she wasn't surprised. "Connor didn't tell you? Eastmarch, Shadowpine, and Grey Ridge signed a treaty 6 weeks ago. 80 wolves combined, expanding territory, looking to consolidate power. They're the reason Connor's desperate for Thornwood. He needs an ally against them, but he's too proud to ask. so he's trying to take what he needs through assassination. The pieces clicked into place in Sera's mind. This wasn't about the pass, this wasn't about trade routes, this was about survival. Connor saw the eastern threat and panicked, reaching for the nearest weapon he could find, even if that weapon was a cursed alpha and a suicide mission. "Then we have common cause," Sera said. "Riverside and Thornwood against the east. That's the alliance you should be proposing." "Connor won't accept it," Aldrich replied. "Not while I'm cursed. Not while I'm the monster in the mountain. He'll never trust me." "Then we change his perception." Sera turned toward his voice. "We capture Gareth's team. We prove Thornwood is strong. And we offer Connor a deal he can't refuse. Joint defense pact, shared intelligence. Thornwood provides military strength. Riverside provides supply lines and farmland. United, you're a match for the Eastern Confederacy. Divided, you both fall." "You make it sound simple," Marcus muttered. "It's not simple. It's necessary." Sera straightened her shoulders. "And I can make it happen. Because I'm the only wolf in this room who has credibility with both sides. Connor's niece. Aldrich's ally. I'm the bridge. The only question is whether you're willing to trust me long enough to build it." Lyra moved closer. Sera heard the rustle of fabric, felt the older wolf's hand on her shoulder. "You have 3 days to prove yourself. 3 days to help us capture this strike team without casualties. If you succeed, we'll consider this alliance. If you fail, or if we even suspect betrayal." "I know the consequences," Sera said quietly. "Good." Lyra's hand squeezed once and released. "Then let's begin. We have a lot of work to do and not much time to do it." The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. Sera was given freedom of the keep, escorted always by either Lyra or Marcus, but no longer imprisoned. She used the time to learn everything she could. The layout of Thornwood Fortress. 3 levels, 47 rooms, walls 42 feet high, foundations sunk 20 feet into bedrock. Defensive positions marked by the echoes of arrow slits and murder holes. Water supply from an underground spring, enough to withstand a year-long siege. The pack's true strength, not 12 wolves, 34. The others had been staying in the lower levels, hidden from casual observation. Veterans mostly, wolves who'd served with Aldrich before the curse drove them away. Lyra had been calling them home slowly, carefully, testing whether their alpha could control himself long enough to lead again. And the curse itself. Sera spent hours with Aldrich, learning to channel it, to direct it, to use it as a tool rather than a weapon. Each touch brought new revelations. She saw his memories, his pain, his century of isolation. And he, she suspected, saw hers, the blindness, the training, the lifetime of being useful instead of wanted. They didn't speak about what it meant. Neither of them was ready for that conversation. On the 3rd night, Gareth's team made their move. Sera heard them coming long before they reached the fortress. She was standing on the eastern wall, the night wind cold against her face, her ears tuned to the forest below. 4 heartbeats, moving fast and low. Professional. Disciplined. "They're here," she said to Marcus, who stood guard beside her. 400 yards south, approaching through the pine grove. Marcus raised his hand, and across the walls, Thornwood wolves shifted into position. Silent. Invisible in the darkness. Waiting. Sera's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it, the moment everything changed. If the plan worked, she'd be a bridge between 2 packs. If it failed, she'd be a traitor to both. "Sera." Aldrich's voice came from her left. She hadn't heard him approach, but his presence was unmistakable. The cold, the scent, the weight of him. "Are you certain about this?" "No," she admitted, "but certainty is a luxury neither of us can afford." His hand found hers in the darkness. The touch sent the familiar jolt through her system, fire and ice and the curse stirring between them. But this time, it felt less like an invasion and more like a promise. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "you chose to stand here, on these walls, with us. That means something." Before Sera could respond, the night exploded with sound. The thermite charges Gareth's team had set on the gate supports detonated with a roar that shook the mountain. Flames erupted, white-hot and blinding. The main gate shuddered but held, the supports damaged but not destroyed. "Now," Marcus commanded. Thornwood wolves poured from hidden positions. Not to kill, to capture. Nets reinforced with silver thread flew through the air. Wolfsbane gas grenades, carefully measured to weaken but not kill, burst across the approach. Within 90 seconds, it was over. Gareth and his team lay tangled in silver nets, coughing from the gas, weapons scattered. Alive, defeated, captured. Sera descended from the wall with Aldrich's hand still in hers, making her way to the courtyard where the prisoners were being secured. She heard Gareth's labored breathing, smelled his familiar scent mixed with fear and pain. "Sera?" His voice was rough from the gas. "Sera, what the hell are you doing on their side?" She knelt beside him, her hand finding his face through the netting. "Saving your life, cousin. You were sent on a suicide mission. Did you really think Connor cared whether you came back?" He said you were compromised, that we had to—" "Kill me?" Sera's laugh was bitter. "Yes, I know. I saw the orders too. Connor sent us both to die, Gareth. The only difference is I figured it out before the trap closed." Aldrich's presence loomed over them. "Gareth Thane, you're going to be our guest for a while. Comfortable, safe, alive. And in 3 days you're going to deliver a message to your alpha. One he can't ignore." "What message?" Aldrich's voice went cold as winter stone. "That Thornwood is awake, and we're done being afraid." Gareth sat in the holding cell with his hands bound in silver chains, not tight enough to burn, but secure enough to remind him he was a prisoner. Sera listened to his breathing from the corridor outside, steady but laced with the kind of anger that comes from betrayal. "You going to talk to me?" His voice carried through the iron bars. "Or just stand there listening like you always do?" Sera stepped into the doorway. "I'm deciding what to say, and whether you'll actually hear it. Try me." She moved into the cell, her hand trailing along the wall for orientation. The space was small, maybe 8 by 10, with a cot and a bucket. Spartan, but not cruel. Aldrich had kept his word, comfortable, safe, alive. Connor sent updated orders. She kept her voice even. "After I left, kill Aldrich, yes, but also kill me. You were supposed to eliminate both targets and blame it on the curse. Make it look like I died trying to complete the tribute, and Aldrich died defending his isolation." Gareth's heartbeat spiked, 120 beats per minute. "That's a lie." "Is it? Search your gut, cousin. Did Connor seem concerned about my survival? Did he give you extraction plans that included me? Or did he just tell you to complete the mission and return home?" Silence, the kind that speaks louder than denials. "I saw the orders," Sera continued quietly. "Aldrich's intelligence network intercepted them 2 days before your team even crossed into Thornwood territory. Connor wanted us both dead because together we represented a threat. Me with my intelligence-gathering skills, Aldrich with his curse and his fortress. Better to eliminate both problems in one strike. You're his prisoner. They've turned you. This is exactly what Connor warned me about." Sera knelt down so she was at his eye level, even though her eyes couldn't meet his. "Then explain the thermite charges. Explain why Connor gave you enough explosive to bring down the gate supports. If you were just meant to kill Aldrich, you'd use stealth, wolfsbane in the dark, silent assassination. But thermite? That's a message. That's burning Thornwood to the ground and making sure no one ever uses it again. Strategic denial. If we couldn't hold the fortress, we'd make sure the Eastern Confederacy couldn't either. Or Connor never intended for you to hold it at all. He intended for you to destroy it and die in the process." Sera reached through the bars and found his bound hands. "You were a suicide squad, Gareth, and I was the bait to make sure Aldrich was distracted when you struck." His hands trembled under hers, not from fear, from rage. "Connor wouldn't—" "Connor is desperate. The Eastern Confederacy has 80 wolves and growing. Riverside has 47. He's looking at extinction, and desperate wolves make terrible decisions." She squeezed his hands gently. "I don't blame him for trying to survive, but I won't die for his mistakes, and I won't let you die for them either." "So what? You've switched sides? You're Thornwood now?" "I'm survival now, same as you should be." Sera released his hands and stood. "Aldrich is sending you home in 3 days. You and your team, alive and unharmed. You're going to deliver a message to Connor, an offer of alliance, Riverside and Thornwood united against the Eastern threat." Gareth laughed, bitter and sharp. "Connor will never accept. He's terrified of the stone curse. The whole pack is." "Then he'll learn to be more terrified of the Eastern Confederacy." Sera turned toward the door. "Because they're coming, Gareth, and when they do, Riverside will have a choice. Stand with Thornwood or stand alone. I know which one offers better odds of survival." She left him there, his heartbeat still elevated, his mind working through the mathematics of betrayal and necessity. He'd come around, or he wouldn't. Either way, the message would be delivered. Aldrich waited in the corridor, his presence announced by the familiar cold. "You believe he'll convince Connor?" "I believe he'll try. Whether Connor listens is another matter." Sera fell into step beside him as they walked. "We need a stronger argument than just survival. Connor responds to power, to certainty. We need to show him that Thornwood isn't just strong, it's essential." "What did you have in mind?" "A demonstration. Something that proves the curse isn't just a weapon of destruction, that it can be controlled, directed, used to protect instead of kill." They reached the great hall, and Sera heard the presence of others. Lyra's heartbeat, Marcus's, and several unfamiliar rhythms, the Pack Council, assembled and waiting. "Before we discuss alliances with Riverside," Marcus's voice cut through the space, "we need to address the question everyone's been avoiding. What exactly is she?" The last word was pointed, directed at Sera. "She has a name," Aldrich said quietly, but with an edge. "What exactly is Sera Thane?" Marcus amended. "Is she prisoner, guest, ally, mate?" The last word hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Sera felt Aldrich stiffen beside her. The temperature dropped another 5 degrees. "That's not relevant to the current situation." "It's absolutely relevant," another voice interjected. Older, male, carrying the weight of authority. "If she's your mate, Alpha, then Pack law applies. She'd have claim to Luna status. But she's Riverside, she's blind, and she's hosted the curse, or something like it, in her own body. How can we accept her as Luna when we don't even understand what she is?" "Who's speaking?" Sera asked calmly. "Rowan, Pack elder and healer. I've served Thornwood for 60 years, and I've never seen anything like what you did with Marcus, pulling memories from his mind with a touch. That's not natural. That's not Wolf." "You're right. It's not." Sera stepped forward, away from Aldrich's protective proximity. "It's curse, filtered through blindness. The curse wants to destroy light, but I have no light to destroy. So it adapted. It shows me what it sees. Memories, emotions, truth." "And you expect us to trust that?" A younger voice, female, aggressive. "To put our Luna in the hands of someone carrying a curse?" "I expect you to be practical," Sera countered. "The curse exists whether I carry it or not. At least this way, it serves Thornwood instead of isolating its alpha. At least this way, we have a weapon no other pack can match." "We?" The female voice sharpened. "You presume much for someone who's been here less than a week. Then test me." Sera turned toward the voice. "You want to know if I'm worthy of Luna status? Fine. Give me a trial, a challenge. Prove I'm either an asset or a liability. But do it now, because we don't have time for politics when war is coming." The great hall fell silent. Then Lyra laughed. "I like her spine. Aldrich, you've kept worse company over the centuries." "The law is clear," Rowan said slowly. "Any wolf who claims Luna status must prove themselves worthy through trial. Combat, strategy, or service. The Pack Council decides which." "Combat's out," Marcus muttered. "She's blind. That's not a fair test." "Strategy, then," the aggressive female voice suggested. "Let her prove she's the tactician she claims to be." "How?" Aldrich's voice was tight with controlled anger. He didn't like this, didn't like his pack putting Sera through trials. But pack law was pack law, and even an alpha couldn't override it without cause. "The Eastern Confederacy," Lyra said thoughtfully. "They're the real threat. Let Sera prove she can help us navigate that threat. Give her access to our intelligence, our scouts' reports, our territorial maps, and let her devise a strategy that actually works." "That's not a trial. That's just asking her to do what she's already been doing," the female voice protested. "Then we make it harder." Marcus's tone suggested he'd found an angle he liked. "We give her incomplete information. We withhold key details. And we see if she can fill in the gaps using that curse trick of hers. If she can interrogate our own scouts and pull out intelligence they didn't know they had, then she's proven her value." Sera smiled. "I accept, but I have a condition." "You're not in a position to make conditions," Rowan said. "I am, if you want this to be a real trial and not theater." Sera straightened her shoulders. "You give me 3 days, same timeline as Gareth's return to Riverside. I'll provide you with a complete strategic assessment of the Eastern Confederacy, their numbers, their leadership, their weaknesses. And in return, when I succeed, you accept me as Luna. No more questions, no more tests." "And when you fail?" the female voice asked. Then I leave, voluntarily. No alliance with Riverside, no curse partnership with Aldrich. I walk away and you never hear from me again. The silence that followed was heavy with consideration. Sera heard heartbeats accelerating as the council members weighed the offer. Aldrich's had climbed to 35 beats per minute, still slow by normal standards, but for him, practically frantic. Agreed, Rowan said finally. 3 days, prove yourself, and we'll accept you as Luna. Fail, and you leave. Does the council accept these terms? A chorus of affirmatives, some reluctant, some curious, all binding. Then it settled. Lyra's footsteps approached Sera. Come with me. We'll start with the intelligence we have, and may the ancestors help you, because the Eastern Confederacy is a knot that stumped our best strategists for months. The next 3 days were a descent into information warfare. Sera sat in Thornwood's war room, a chamber on the second level that smelled of old maps and strategic anxiety. Lyra had brought her everything they had on the Eastern Confederacy: scout reports, intercepted communications, territorial surveys. But it wasn't enough. The picture was incomplete, fragmentary. The Eastern packs were careful, disciplined, and they knew Thornwood was watching. So Sera did what she did best. She listened. Marcus brought her scouts, one by one, wolves who'd spent weeks in Eastern Territory, observing, cataloging, surviving. Sera touched each one, letting the curse flow through the connection, pulling memories they didn't know they had. From the first scout, a young male named David, she pulled the layout of East March's primary camp. He'd only seen it from a distance, but the curse showed her what his wolf eyes had captured and his human mind had forgotten. 300 yards across, 40 structures, a command tent flying a banner with a silver eagle. From the second scout, an older female named Christine, she extracted the daily patrol patterns. Christine had tracked them for 2 weeks, noting when guards changed and where they concentrated forces. But under Sera's touch, those observations became precise data. 6-hour rotations, heavier concentration on the western border, a gap in coverage between midnight and 2 a.m. on the southern approach. From the third scout, Marcus himself, she pulled something more valuable, a conversation he'd overheard between 2 eastern wolves discussing their alpha. Dmitri, Russian accent, brutal, but also cautious. He'd consolidated 3 packs not through strength alone, but through politics, offering protection, resources, stability. And he was planning something. A 4th pack, a treaty negotiation happening in 3 days. Sera sat back from the table, her mind assembling the pieces like a puzzle only she could see. The Eastern Confederacy isn't finished expanding. They're recruiting a 4th pack, and if they succeed, they'll have over 100 wolves. That's not just a threat to Riverside and Thornwood. That's the foundation of an empire. Lyra leaned against the wall, her arms crossed. We knew they were growing, but a 4th pack? Which one? Marcus's memory didn't include that detail, but it included something better, a location. Sera traced her fingers across the table where the map would be. The negotiation is happening at neutral ground, an old mining settlement 20 miles northeast of here, abandoned for decades, perfect for a secret meeting. If we knew which pack they were courting, Aldrich said from the doorway, we could disrupt the negotiation, maybe even turn that pack to our side. Or we could do something smarter. Sera turned toward his voice. We could attend the negotiation ourselves. The room went silent. That's insane, Marcus said flatly. We'd be walking into enemy territory, outnumbered, surrounded. Not if we're invited. Sera smiled. The 4th pack, whoever they are, is considering alliance with the East because they're afraid. They need protection, resources. What if we offered them the same thing? What if we crashed the negotiation and made a counteroffer? They'd kill us before we finished talking, Lyra said. They'd try, but they won't succeed if we make ourselves too valuable to kill. Sera's smile widened. What if I used the curse to expose Dimitri's lies? What if I pulled truth from his mind right there in front of the 4th pack and showed them exactly what kind of alliance they're signing up for? Aldrich moved closer. She heard the floorboards creak under his weight. You're talking about using yourself as a weapon, in hostile territory, with no guarantee you'll survive. I'm talking about turning their strength into weakness. They think numbers make them safe, but one wolf with the ability to expose every secret, every lie, every betrayal, that's power that terrifies emperors. It's also power that gets you killed, Rowan interjected. The curse isn't invincible. If Dimitri realizes what you're doing, he'll cut you down before you can finish. Then we make sure he doesn't realize until it's too late. Sera stood, her hands bracing against the table. Aldrich comes with me, so does Lyra. 3 wolves approaching under parley flag. We claim we're there to negotiate our own terms with the 4th pack. And while Dimitri's focused on Aldrich, on the alpha he's heard horror stories about for a century, I work. This is too risky, Marcus said. Everything is risky, Sera shot back, but the alternative is waiting for the Eastern Confederacy to finish consolidating power and then watching them roll over Riverside and Thornwood like a wave over sand. I'd rather take the fight to them when they're vulnerable, when they think they're safe. Aldrich's hand found her shoulder. The touch sent the familiar jolt through her, but she was getting used to it now, fire and ice and something deeper, something that felt like trust. If we do this, he said quietly, you understand there's no going back. You'll have declared yourself Thornwood. Luna, mine. Connor will see it as ultimate betrayal. Connor already betrayed me when he sent Gareth with orders to kill me. I'm just making it official. Sera covered his hand with hers. Besides, you need me. Admit it. The curse only works this way because of what I am. Blind, broken, adapted. Take that away, and you're back to being the monster in the mountain. You're not broken. The words came out fiercer than she'd expected. You're the most dangerous wolf I've ever met, and that's exactly why this terrifies me. She understood what he wasn't saying, that care led to attachment. Attachment led to vulnerability, and vulnerability was how the curse won, how it always won. But they were past that now, past the point of pretending this was just strategy and survival. Then be terrified, Sera said softly. But be terrified together with me, because I'm not going anywhere. The mining settlement sat in a valley 20 miles northeast of Thornwood, surrounded by bare hills and the skeletal remains of industrial ambition. Sera heard it before she saw it, of course. The wind whistling through broken windows, the creak of rusted equipment, the hollow echo of a place long dead. But underneath that, heartbeats, dozens of them. She sat on horseback between Aldrich and Lyra, the 3 of them approaching under a white parley flag. Behind them, hidden in the hills, Marcus waited with 20 Thornwood wolves. Insurance, in case the negotiation went wrong and violence became necessary. 57 heartbeats, Sera murmured, concentrated in the main building at the center of the settlement. That's more than we expected, Lyra said quietly. Dimitri brought his full council. So did the 4th pack, apparently. Aldrich's voice was tight. This isn't just a negotiation, it's a show of force. They reached the settlement's edge and dismounted. Sera's boots touched packed earth, and she let her senses expand. The main building was 60 yards ahead, 2 stories, wood construction, rotting but still standing. Guards at every entrance, their heartbeats steady and professional. A figure emerged from the building's entrance. Heavy footsteps, male, mid-40s from the scent. And underneath the usual wolf musk, something else, old blood, lots of it. Aldrich Stone. The voice carried a thick Russian accent, each word carefully shaped. The cursed Alpha. I had heard you never left your fortress, yet here you stand. This is unexpected honor. Dimitri, I presume. Aldrich's tone was neutral, revealing nothing. I heard you were hosting negotiations. Thought I'd extend my own offer. Offer? Dimitri laughed. You have been isolated for a century. What could you possibly offer that interests me? Survival. Same thing you're selling to the Greytide pack. Aldrich gestured toward the building. That is who you're courting, isn't it? The coastal wolves? You're offering them protection from Thornwood expansion, security, place in your growing empire. Sera heard heartbeats spike inside the building. Aldrich had guessed right. Greytide was the 4th pack. You are well informed, Dimitri said slowly. But it changes nothing. Greytide needs allies. I offer strength. You offer only reputation of monster and curse. I offer something better. Aldrich stepped aside, and Sera felt his hand on her elbow, guiding her forward. Truth. This is Sera Thane, my Luna, and she has gift that makes lies impossible. Sera heard the shift in the crowd inside the building. Confusion, curiosity, fear. Gift? Dimitri's voice hardened. What kind of gift? The kind that sees through deception. Sera tilted her head toward him. You're planning to absorb Greytide, not ally with them. You'll give them 3 months of protection, maybe 6. long enough for them to relax, to integrate their forces into your command structure, and then you'll eliminate their alpha and claim their territory as your own. It's what you did to Shadowpine. It's what you'll do to anyone foolish enough to trust you." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Dimitri laughed, but it sounded forced, brittle. "This is wild accusation. You have no proof." "I have better than proof. I have your memories." Sera took a step forward. "Let me touch you. Let me show Greytide's alpha exactly what you're planning, unless you're afraid of what I'll find." "I fear nothing from blind girl playing tricks." "Then you won't mind proving it." Sera extended her hand. "One touch. That's all it takes. And Greytide will know whether you're offering alliance or trap." Movement from inside the building. A new figure emerged. Female. Younger than Dimitri. Her scent carried salt and seaweed. Coastal wolf, Greytide's alpha. "I would like to see this demonstration," she said, her voice carrying an edge. "Dimitri has made many promises. Let us see if they are worth the paper they are written on." Dimitri's heartbeat climbed, 100 beats per minute. He was cornered. If he refused, he looked guilty. If he accepted, Sera would expose everything. "Very well." He moved forward, and Sera heard the whisper of steel. "But if you lie, blind girl, I will know, and you will not leave this place alive." Sera smiled. "I never lie, I don't need to." His hand closed around hers, rough and calloused and reeking of violence. The moment contact was made, the curse surged through her like a flood breaking through a dam. Images cascaded into her mind, Dimitri's memories, raw and unfiltered. A war council 3 months ago. Shadowpine's alpha tied to a chair, beaten, forced to sign territory over before being executed. Dimitri standing over the body, triumphant. Planning sessions for Greytide. Maps marked with strike points. Timetables for assassination. Lists of which Greytide wolves would be kept and which would be eliminated, all wrapped in the language of alliance and protection. And deeper still, the real goal, not just 4 packs, 10, 20, an empire stretching from the eastern seaboard to the mountain territories, with Dimitri as emperor and everyone else as subjects. Sera pulled back from the connection, gasping. The curse had shown her more than she'd expected, more than she'd wanted to see. But it was enough. "He killed Shadowpine's alpha," she said, her voice carrying across the settlement. "Torture and execution disguised as negotiation, and he's planning the same for Greytide. 6 months after you sign the treaty, he'll move against your alpha, blame it on outside threats, consolidate power, and absorb your pack into his empire." The Greytide alpha's heartbeat spiked to 140. "Is this true?" "She lies," Dimitri snarled. "She is Thornwood's spy. She speaks poison to divide us." "Then let her touch you," the Greytide alpha shot back. "Let her read your memories in front of everyone here. Prove her wrong." Dimitri's hand went to his blade. "I will not be interrogated by cursed witch, because you know what she'll find." Aldrich's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "You know she's telling the truth, and now so does Greytide." The Greytide alpha turned on her heel and strode back into the building. Sera heard rapid footsteps, orders being shouted. Within 30 seconds, Greytide wolves were streaming out of the settlement, moving fast toward the hills where their own backup waited. Dimitri stood frozen, his hand still on his blade, his empire crumbling around him in real time. "You have made mistake," he said quietly. "Both of you. You have made enemy today that will not forget." "Good," Sera replied. "I prefer my enemies afraid. It makes them predictable." Dimitri's wolves began to withdraw, their formations tight and professional despite the chaos. They knew when a negotiation had failed, knew when to cut losses and retreat. Within 10 minutes, the settlement was empty except for Thornwood wolves and the lingering scent of violence narrowly avoided. Lyra approached, her hand on Sera's shoulder. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever witnessed." "Can it be both?" Sera's laugh was shaky with adrenaline crash. "We need to move," Aldrich said. "Dimitri won't forget this. He'll retaliate. The question is when and where." "Let him come!" Marcus called from the hills, his voice carrying triumph. "We just broke his alliance before it formed. Greytide won't trust him now, and every other pack he approaches will hear about what happened here." Sera leaned against Aldrich, suddenly exhausted. The curse had taken more from her than she'd expected. Using it as a weapon, pulling memories from a hostile wolf, it had cost her. She could feel the cold lingering in her veins, slower to fade than usual. "You did well," Aldrich murmured, his arm supporting her weight. "Better than well. You just changed the balance of power in this entire region." I just made us a very dangerous enemy. We already had that enemy. You just made him visible. Aldrich's hand tightened on her shoulder. Come on, let's go home. Home. The word settled into Sera's chest with unexpected warmth. Thornwood. The fortress she'd been sent to as a sacrifice. The place that had become her refuge, her pack, her future. They rode back through the hills as the sun set, painting the sky in colors Sera would never see but could feel in the warmth on her face. Behind them, the Eastern Confederacy's expansion had been stopped. Ahead, the war that would inevitably follow. But for now, they had won, and that was enough. Gareth's release happened 3 days after his capture. Sera stood in the courtyard as his chains were removed, as his weapons were returned, as supplies for the journey home were loaded onto his horse. "You're really doing this," he said quietly. "Staying with them." "I really am." "Connor won't forgive you. The pack won't forgive you." "I know." Sera reached out and found his hand. "But they sent me to die, Gareth. I don't owe them my death. I owe them nothing." He squeezed her hand once. "The message. What exactly am I supposed to tell Connor?" "Tell him the truth. That Thornwood is awake. That Aldrich Stone is no longer isolated. That we've disrupted the Eastern Confederacy's expansion and we're offering Riverside one chance to ally with us before the real war begins." She paused. "And tell him that if he refuses, I'll be the one leading Thornwood wolves across our border. I know every weakness, every patrol pattern, every defensive position. Make him understand what he's lost by trying to have me killed." Gareth was silent for a long moment, then, "You've changed. You used to be quiet, obedient. Now you sound like an alpha?" Sera smiled. "I learned from the best. Now go, deliver the message. And Gareth, stay safe, because when Connor makes his decision, I want you on the right side of it." He mounted his horse, and his team fell in around him. Battered, defeated, but alive. That was the message, too. Thornwood had shown mercy, had proven they could capture without killing. That restraint was its own kind of power. As Gareth's group rode through the gates, Sera turned and found Aldrich waiting behind her. "The Pack Council is assembled," he said. "They're ready to hear your strategic assessment." "All of it?" "Every detail, including what you pulled from Dimitri's mind." They walked together to the great hall, and Sera felt the weight of eyes on her as they entered. The council, the pack, wolves who doubted her, tested her, challenged her. She was about to prove them all right or wrong. For the next hour, Sera laid out everything she'd learned. The Eastern Confederacy's structure, Dimitri's ambitions, the failed Greytide negotiation and what it meant for regional stability, the vulnerabilities she'd identified, the opportunities for countermoves. And when she finished, the great hall was silent. Then Rowan stood. "In 60 years of service to Thornwood, I have never heard a more complete strategic analysis. You have proven yourself not just as tactician, but as alpha in your own right." Lyra rose next. "The trial was to prove your value. You've exceeded every expectation. I support your claim as Luna." One by one, the council members stood, some with enthusiasm, some with resignation, but all in agreement. Marcus was last. He approached Sera directly, and she heard him kneel. "I questioned your worth. I was wrong. You're exactly what this pack needs, exactly what our alpha needs." He paused. "Welcome home, Luna." The great hall erupted in howls, the sound of a pack united, a pack ready for war, a pack with a Luna who'd proven herself through intelligence, courage, and the kind of dangerous gift that turned curses into weapons. Aldrich's hand found hers, and this time when the curse flowed through the connection, it felt less like invasion and more like completion. Two halves of a whole, fire and ice, sight and blindness, king and queen. "Ready?" he murmured. "For what?" "Everything that comes next. The war, the alliance negotiations, Connor's response, Dimitri's revenge." Sera smiled and squeezed his hand. "I've been ready my whole life. I just didn't know it until now." The ceremony happened that night under the full moon. Ancient ritual, older than Thornwood itself. Aldrich marked her shoulder with his bite, the traditional mate bond made visible, and Sera marked him in return, the curse flaring through the connection, sealing them together in ways that went beyond flesh. When it was done, they stood on the battlements overlooking Thornwood territory. Miles of forest and mountain, stretching toward horizons Sera would never see, but could feel in the wind on her face. "They're coming," Aldrich said quietly. Riverside, Eastern Confederacy, maybe others who see Thornwood's resurgence as threat. Let them come. Sera leaned into his warmth. We'll be ready, together. You know this means you can never go back, never be what you were. I was never anything before this, just a tool, a weapon Connor used and discarded. She turned her face toward his. Now I'm a queen, a Luna, a wolf who turned her greatest weakness into her greatest strength. I wouldn't go back for anything. In the distance, a howl rose from the forest. Then another. The pack, singing to the moon, singing to their Luna, singing to the future they were building together. Sera closed her sightless eyes and listened to the symphony of it. Heartbeats and howls and the whisper of wind through ancient pines. This was her world now, built of sound and scent and the curse that flowed through her veins like dark wine. And somewhere south, she knew Gareth was delivering the message. Connor was making calculations, decisions, choosing between pride and survival. The war was coming, but Thornwood was ready, and when the first wolves crossed their borders, they would learn what it meant to face a blind Luna who saw everything, and an alpha who'd finally learned to use his curse as a crown instead of a cage. The game had changed, the pieces were in motion, and Sera Thane, the broken lamb sent to die, had become the queen who would decide the fate of them all.